I think it's working. Yeah, I have the docs on here. So it's done redirecting to YouTube. I've never been live on YouTube before. I feel so fancy. Yeah, something. Yeah, that's the I wanna get a mic so I can start doing like live videos in there, like podcasting videos. But I have a ring light at home. Um, so I'm gonna bring it over and then get me a mic and then I'll do like little broker moments in there and put them on Facebook and stuff for our agents, but then also for my clients, I can do like market updates and stuff.
Since I'm an SRES, so I'm starting to go out to some, I have 3 assisted living facilities that I'm kind of working with.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting with them, so I'm kind of showing people what can be done, and then I'm gonna start to do some meetings at senior centers.
Yeah.
With an attorney.
Okay.
Or CPA, and those.
Yeah. And have them ready to go. Okay. Seems like maybe it's going to do it. It may lag, but we'll see. Here we are. Okay. Yeah. The only issue is we want the TV to be muted so you don't hear. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Nope, that's that one. It's this one. That's it. I think that's it because I muted the TV. So perfect. Okay, so this class is on the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. And we're also going to pop into one other agreement that we have. So no, I don't want to pause it. I just want to move this bar. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so let's talk about the exclusive right to sell listing agreement first, and then we'll go to the disclosure of So we're just going to walk through line by line of this. I'm going to tell you what I do on my contracts, and if you guys have questions, you can ask questions about what things mean. So just a side note, I'm going to have edited like my edits on these up for you guys. And they're going to be like in a package that we give to new agents. So you guys will have a copy of this. I just haven't updated it with the new contract yet. So because the contract has been updated. So just to reiterate that you cannot depict any amount of compensation on the MLS. So whatever you put on here is your private information. You cannot advertise that to anyone, any other agents, nothing. It'll get you in trouble. You can do it through marketing and direct communication. Be very careful about how you market it. I wouldn't even talk about it, to be honest. I don't even discuss it. I put it in my offer when I'm working for a buyer. I don't even ask the other agent because it's a part of the tools that I use to write a contract. So, but this is about listing. So this is, you have somebody that wants to sell their house. They say they're ready to go and they want to fill out a listing agreement with you. So the first step of the listing agreement is coming up with a timeline. So you will see here, I'm going to zoom so we can see it a little bit better. You're going to put a day and a time that you guys agree to list the property. Once that day and time is on here, you have to have it on the MLS or you have to have a delayed entry. So if this is something you want to write for in the future, like say I know my people don't want to sell until March. So maybe I write this with a March 1st date on it and just have them sign it. And that starts on March 1st. You cannot advertise this if it's like, you can't advertise a listing unless it's on the MLS. So make sure that you keep in mind those dates. So some people do a year contracts on listings. Some people do 6 months. That is up to you on what timeline you want to do for that. So your expiration date would be when the listing will expire. And that is something that's going to go in the MLS. And if your property is still on the market and they still want to sell, you'll just have to extend the listing agreement. 6 months is what I do. That's my personal preference. If I can't sell it in 6 months, I probably shouldn't be selling it. Sometimes the market's a little bit slower, might do 9 months, but realistically, I do 6. I can usually sell it in 3.
That's only available for realtors.
Correct. Those don't syndicate with like Zillow or Realtor.com. So our coming soons, but this is an opportunity for you because as agents, we have access to the MLS. And if we put our clients on a search in the MLS, they can see our coming soon. They can see the coming soons, but the general public cannot. So it is a great way for us to say, hey, I know you like using Zillow and that's really fine. You can continue to use Zillow, but I'm going to set you up for a search um, in my I'm sorry, I have my phone on Do Not Disturb, and it really, really ticks me off when people
So you can
say,
send a listing to.
I'm obviously busy.
If it says coming soon, you can send it to one of your clients, or potential buyer,
Yeah.
say, and then you can reach out to the realtor and say, hey, I already have a buyer, let's talk about it even before it goes up.
Well, no, you can't. Coming soon, they're not allowed to show it. They're not allowed to accept any offers. There's really no talking until it hits.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can call and get more information, but you can't write an offer. You can't go see it. You're not allowed to do anything. Coming soon, it's off limits to everybody. I mean, she can't even show it. The other agent can't even show it inside the brokerage. So it's coming soon. Coming soons are reserved for, I mean, if you have a seller that maybe is going to do improvements to the property and they need 2 weeks to get those improvements done, or you have an ideal listing date and you don't want to mark it until then because you want to, bring interest and then get multiple offers or whatever. So coming soon is a great, here's the thing. Coming soon is a great solution for some people. But you can't really do anything during the coming soon period. So delayed entry is what I will usually do. And what a delayed entry is, there's a separate form for that. But I want to make sure to hit on this because we had an issue with this in the office this week. So delayed entry listing, okay? So if you have a seller that wants to sell and they say, hey, Maggie, I want to sell, but I don't want to sell for 3 months. I don't want it to go on the market for 3 months. But if you can find me a buyer before then, I'll take an offer. It won't be ready for 3 months and I don't want to deal with it yet. Okay, so we sign a listing agreement that starts today and I have them sign a delayed entry agreement listing. What that means is I don't have to put it on the MLS yet because I have a delayed entry listing agreement. So it's a separate addendum. However, I can only market it to my brokerage. That's it. I can't market to Comey and Shepherd. I can't market to Sipsey Klein. I cannot tell other people about it. I can tell all my agents in my office about it. I can hold an open house for my agents in my office, but I cannot tell anybody else about it. If somebody else finds out about it, you have to put it on the MLS within 1 day or you're fined $1,000. Yes, it's very, very serious. So it's called Clear Cooperation. I would look into it if you haven't looked into it. Clear Cooperation is something the MLS does not mess around with because we are all a part of the MLS system so that it's fair to all, right? We put a listing up, everybody sees it, it syndicates to the public, it's fair. If you pick and choose what agents you want to share your listing with, that's not fair. It's not. So you get fined. First offense is $1,000, second offense is $5,000. So don't mess around with Clear Cooperation. We had an agent who didn't understand that this week and we got to work through it. So yeah. So if you have a delayed entry, you cannot hold a property. A pocket listing is a delayed entry. A pocket listing, you can't go tell Joe at Comey and Shepherd about, or you're going to get in trouble. So do not do that. If you want to, there's a couple of different options now, and we can go into this at another class, but I would encourage you to look at the MLS. If you go to the MLS, this is great. Just so you guys are aware for the future. So if you go to the MLS here and you go to, I think it's contracts and forms, maybe. No, that's the RAGC. Let me pull this up because I can, if you guys want this link, I can send it out to you. But they've changed a few things recently. So there's a few different listing, like extra listing things we can do now. So you can have a property up on the market now that people don't want showings. That wasn't a possibility before. It wasn't allowed because if you had a property marketed on the MLS, you had to be able to allow for showings in some way. I got fined for it one time because it was an occupied rental and I only had 1 day that I was letting people go through it. And it was like, hey, you can't do that. It's that in 24-hour notice, whatever. So you can do that now. It's an option. So if you go into your MLS and you go to links and then links and documents, you go to, it said like Tuesday tips or something. It might be under MLS forms and documents. Yeah. So here's all your listing forms that you may need. Multiple listing options for sellers. So there's a couple different things you can look at here, but there's like a limited marketing authorization and disclosure form now. And so basically they can say that they don't want it in the MLS or they do want it in the MLS, and it tells you all the things that you can and can't do with that. So I would recommend and encourage you guys to look up those I can't come up with the word, those forms, so that you can see exactly how our the rules and regulations work for the MLS. And then there was like a tip Tuesday, and that was really helpful. So if you go into the same where the forms are, and you go into Tuesday tip archives. Okay, so they should be, I mean, I usually get these in my email, and if you guys don't, make sure you're getting those. But if something is changing, like these are old. I don't know why I had them like the updated versions this morning. It looks like these are dated.
So on Tuesday, when we have our big meetings, because I have,
Yes,
so sometimes when they say I have, pocket listing.
it probably is a pocket listing.
Okay, so sometimes we said, what is it going on?
Sure. And that would be something that they would have to have a delayed listing agreement. And it's only available to be disclosed to our brokerage. Now, sometimes I might say I've got people that are looking for a house in, or I've got, a house that may go on the market, a 4-bedroom in Liberty Township, if they can find something or whatever. In that case, I don't have a listing agreement on it yet, or I have one that starts at a certain date. So it gets a little bit convoluted, but as soon as I show it, if it's to an outside brokerage, I would have to put it on the MLS. If it's in our brokerage, as long as I have that delayed listing agreement. So if I say that, like I have people that are thinking about selling in, Springboro, okay? And if we could find a buyer, they might sell, but I don't have a listing agreement on it. So I might say, hey, I have a potential in Springboro for a 5-bedroom. And somebody might say, hey, I might have a buyer for that. I would reach out to my client and say, hey, I need you to sign this listing agreement and delayed entry so that I'm following the rules so I can bring people in my brokerage in, because I advertised it to the brokerage, and I would get a listing agreement before I showed it. Yeah, so it can get a little bit confusing, but if you guys have questions on anything about, like if you have a listing that you were thinking about doing one of these options with, please call me and let's look at all of your options, because I don't want you guys fined. Because when you get fined, then I have to deal with it. And I don't want to deal with it. You have to pay it, but I have the headache. So, anyways, back to this. So we're going to put in all of the information, the parcel number, the zip code, the address, and you're going to come up with your expiration time. I said I usually do 6 months. Some people do 9 months. Some people do a year. Hell, you can do 2 years. It doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. And then you're going to pick a price for the listing. This should be something that you and the client have already discussed. So I'm not going to read through every line of it because you guys should be familiar with the forms. But if there's something that's excluded from the real estate, this would be, hey, we have a hot tub out back, we're taking that with us. That's not going to stay. So you would need to put that in there, and you would also need to note that on the MLS. Our swing set is going with us. Okay, that's going to go in there. Or they want their TV mounts. Like TV mounts stay with the house because they're connected to the house. So if they're like, hey, we're taking our mounts, that would be in there. Anything like that, that's not obviously going. So obviously their furniture is not going, right? It's not connected to the real estate, but a hot tub is something that can convey. A swing set usually does convey because it's bolted into the ground. So things like that would be basically an exception to the rule that they want to take with them would be in here. Anything else, this would be included in the marketing of the real estate. So if they want to offer a home warranty, you could put that in there. If they want to, I don't know, if they need to stay there for a month after closing, that would go in there or something like that. Anything extra that you need to market. So would go in that line 40, number 4. This is a certification of ownership. This is important. There are some scammers out there that are selling like vacant lots, and they connect with you on whatever, and they seem like real people and they're great. Certification of ownership, this is them signing and saying, yes, we're the people that own this and we're allowed to sign for this. You also need to make sure that the auditor site lines up with what your people are telling you. I mean, that's on you. So make sure you do that. So possession and occupancy, again, you should be familiar with the terminology in here, but we'll just go through the check boxes. So is it in a historic district? Sometimes it's not blatantly obvious that things are in historic districts. So you may want to call zoning, you may want to call the auditor and double check that. Sometimes it will say on the auditor site, like if it's a part of something different, but it's also always a good idea to check. There are a lot of historic districts, especially like in Hamilton, Dayton, Madeira. I think there's historic districts. So places you wouldn't necessarily think could be a historic district. So always check that. If it's got a lease, you put it as subject to a lease. If it's somebody living in their property, then obviously not. Does it have an HOA? That's important. You should always have all that documentation. So, I mean, when you're signing the listing agreement, yes, you can know if there's an HOA or not, and that's fine. But once you have the listing agreement signed, you need to get that documentation because the minute you get an offer, you're going to need it anyways. So it's a good idea just to have it and stick it on the MLS in the docs. And then that's one hurdle you've already gotten through in the contract. Because the HOA, when you write a purchase contract, the HOA just, basically inspection period for the HOA is another contingency in there and the buyers can back out. So if you already have that work done and you've got it connected to your listing, you don't have to have that contingency in your contract. That's less places for people to back out. Is it in a floodplain? Again, something good to note. There's a flood map. If you go to, I think it's FEMA flood map. If you just Google that, there's an interactive map that you can literally type in your address and it'll tell you if your property's in a floodplain. Most of the time they're not. But there are some, especially the closer you get to the freaking river, we're in flood zones. Some stuff in Kentucky might be in flood zone. So that's always important to take a look at that and make sure your people should know they should have flood insurance if they're in a flood zone. If you question it, definitely look into it and ask. Does it have a housing inspection before transfer? That's not something I've ever dealt with, or pre-sale inspection. Usually it's going to be is not. If for some reason it is, contact me. We'll talk through it. Any pending orders of public authority? Is there a short sale on it? Is there a sheriff's auction going up? Public authority would be like a sheriff's auction, not necessarily a short sale. But any pending orders of public authority. Also, I once helped people buy a house that was scheduled to be demolished and I didn't know. So if I was listing that house, I would have done this research and somebody would have known that was buying it, but the agent didn't do that. So that's important. Has any work been performed that may result in future assessments or liens on the property, anything like that? So if they just did a remodel and they didn't pay their contractor, there could be a mechanic's lien on the house. That's something to note. A lot of these are going to be has not on your listing agreement, but it's important to know what they all mean. Here's a condemnation, appropriation, change in zonings, future assessments, whatever. These are code violations. Are there code violations on the property? Also something important. Did they have, toxic or hazardous materials? Was the property a meth lab at one point? I did sell a meth lab one time. It was a house that somebody had a meth lab in, but I did. So that is something that, it was a really nice house, like $350,000 house in Hamilton. Really nice meth lab basement. So you never know. Any encroachment, shared driveways, party walls, that's important too. So this should be, it should say on the auditor site or on the deed, a copy of the deed, if you can pull that up on the auditor site, if there are encroachments or easements. It's always important to check that. We had something come across our desk a couple weeks ago where there was an easement for a backyard, and it was the sewer district that had the easement for these people's backyard. Well, their shed and their fence are on the easement of the sewer district, and they don't actually own that like the sewer district does. So there was a big dispute with that. So if there are easements, encroachments, shared driveways, things like that, you want to make sure you disclose all of that because that could come back to bite you later. And encroachment basically means like somebody's, like the neighbors are encroaching on the listings property in some way, and it's documented, right? So we built a shed here in 1910 and it's been there ever since. That would be an encroachment. An easement is I have to, and you should have learned this in real estate school, but it's good to refresh. An easement is, I live here and the road is way over there and Bob has a driveway that goes to his house and then goes to my house. So I have an easement to use Bob's driveway to get to my house because I have to ease onto his property to get to mine. So look up those if you don't know what they are.
I got a
Yeah.
question on that.
Yeah.
So this is not my sale, but I have a friend who's selling his home, He has a pool.
Yeah.
Underground pool. Property borders, public parkland.
Okay.
Has a letter from this township stating that his 1 foot encroachment on that parkland is acceptable and will pass on to whoever he sells the house. to.
Yep.
He asked, like, how much is it? I said, no, just make the realtor aware of it.
Yep.
Is that
And it should be
correct?
on the deed. I mean, it needs to be filed.
Recorded.
Yeah, recorded. So if in that situation, I would say, yeah, that's not my area of expertise, and I would make sure that it's recorded. But if you have a letter, it goes to the letter. Yeah, that's a perfect example though, and that's something that if he didn't have that and maybe he wasn't aware of it, it can cause problems for people down the line. So it's important to try and disclose those things if we know them. Obviously, sometimes sellers don't know. We have to do our best to educate them on what they need to disclose, but sometimes they may not know. So, shared driveways are really common, especially like in Oakley. Shared driveways. So is there a joint agreement for maintenance on that driveway? That's something people will ask if you have a listing with a shared driveway. Like, what if it needs repaved? Who's going to do it? So sometimes I've had to reach out to neighbors and say, hey, is this 50-50 or what have you guys done in the past or what would you guys be willing to do? And then just have that in writing. So I did have that recently. I sold a house in South Lebanon and they shared a driveway with the church next door. And the church was like, yeah, we'll split 50-50, snow removal 50-50 drive. I mean, they're great, because half of it was just like a double driveway, but they used one driveway to get to the back of both their properties, the house and the church. So it worked out. We got a letter from the church. We had it notarized. We sent it to the new buyer and they all are on the same agreement now. No abatements, tax abatements or homestead exemptions. So if it's homesteaded, then the taxes are going to be lower on the auditor site. Right. Now I will tell you that I do not understand this as well as I probably should. Homestead kind of confuses me. I don't want to give you direction on that because I don't want to misspeak, but I think that there's a way that it can be assumed by the new buyer. I think. I think so, but again, it's something to look into. Yes, I've seen it listed on listings as an advantage for buyers. So I think there is some way to do it, but I would ask a tax person. Yeah. Okay. Sure. But some buyers might find it attractive. Sure, with age. Absolutely. Because you can assume those homestead taxes and then it's cheaper, which is nice. Because that's the one thing my mom's like, oh, these taxes, the taxes are going to be, she's in Westchester and it's like, she built a house too, a Drees house, and her taxes are very high. And she's like, well, I can retire. My house might be paid off, but I got to pay, 12 grand in taxes every year. It's a lot. Not yet. She will be. My stepdad's before her, so she's banking on him. We told him the other day, he's like, oh, I'm thinking about retiring. I was like, great, you can be my babysitter. This sounds awesome. So I'm the oldest and I have an 8-year-old. And I have 2 younger brothers. So my parents are still young. So, and I had the only grandchild for 8 years and we just got our second grandchild and his name is Wes and he's 5 months, almost 6 months old. And so he's wonderful. So now we have 2 grandbabies, but we're just, my parents are just on the start of their grandparent adventure. My son's been very spoiled for 8 years. So that's been awesome. He cried when my brother told him he was pregnant. He was like, I don't want competition. What are you talking about? Like, right. No. They may be able to. Right. Mine's high. And you can always reach out to the title company to like explain certain properties to you a little bit better. And then also like I have a tax professional that I'll reach out when I have certain questions and I kind of hand it to her because that's not my area of expertise. So knowing about a potential opportunity is awesome. And then connecting your people with the professionals that know what they're doing is the best way to go. Okay, again, public authority stuff. It's is or is not owned by a person or entity subject to foreign investments. So that's something you may come across. I never have. Okay, so this just says that they'll complete a lead-based paint disclosure and they're going to complete a property disclosure unless they're exempt from that. And then this is where your HOA stuff goes in. So if there's an HOA that has mandatory membership, you're going to click yeah, is. Does it have any assessment? So this is something that you would get from that documentation that you're pulling. Any assessments? It may or may not. You know, condos, sometimes they'll have like an assessment to put a new roof on or whatever. So that could be something you're dealing with. And then are there any other fees that are separate from the association dues? So that's mandatory. So if there's an HOA, but then there's also a community pool, those dues may be separate and they may have to pay them separately. So that's where you would note that. And then they would just say no association violations except, and then if there is an exception, you put it there, if not NA. That's the other thing I haven't mentioned thus far. Don't leave a blank, put NA, put none, put a dash. I don't care what you do. Don't leave it blank. Susan, the old broker here, was so adamant about that. And I love that because I will sometimes leave things blank and she's like, no, Maggie, you put dashes or you put NA or you put none. And so I've gotten really good about doing that because it's fill in the blank. So we don't want somebody to fill in the blank after the fact and us not have agreed to it. So I love Susan for that. Shout out to Susan for making me fill in my blanks. Okay, so what is your title under? Title shall be free and clear of unencumbered at closing with the exception of what? This is where if a mortgage is being assumed, you would put that there. Installments of taxes, assessments. If there's anything extra that's not going to be clear on the title when you close, this is probably something you won't have to deal with unless you're doing an assumption. But then on line 141, you're going to put any names of people that have to sign for the real estate, and this includes dower rights. So whatever it says on the auditor site, Tom and Kathy Smith. If that's on the auditor site, you put Tom and Kathy Smith here. If it's Tom Smith and you know that Tom and Kathy are married, you put Tom and Kathy Smith here because dower rights in Ohio. This is just Ohio. So that's another thing to know. If you guys don't understand dower rights, make sure you understand them because I don't care if they're going through a divorce. If they're not divorced yet, they're a dower. It's just how it is. I think it's outdated and silly, but that's my own feminist opinion. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a feminist, but there are some things I'm like, you know what, if I own this house and I decide to marry a man, then he should not also own my house. I think that's full of, but that's just why you don't get married. It's true. It's true. But you know, I moved to Memphis for a while and they were 10 years behind here. Okay, you're 20 years out of Memphis then. Yeah. Right. That's what brought you here. Yeah, I will. The South is definitely slower. Like it was weird to live in Memphis because like there were so many signs of the past still there. I mean, they didn't fully segregate schools until like the 70s or 80s there. And like the school my brothers went to was the segregated. Like there were so many, it was wild. Even Kentucky. Yeah. Well, here I feel like for me growing up here, there wasn't a lot of evidence of backwards ways. And then I moved down south and I was like, y'all are nuts. Like it's crazy. I mean, I love it down there, but the coast, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's just interesting how it can be different. I feel like Cincinnati's pretty good. I feel like I mean, obviously there's things that could be different, but it's a pretty good place to live. All right, so this is the most important part, line 152, and I gotta stop talking so much because it's 11:40. So I got 20 minutes to go through the rest of this and the other one. So this is where you're going to talk about your compensation. And this is the most important part for you because this is how you get paid. And it's also probably an important part for your seller as well. So this is where you'll put your compensation. If it's a flat fee, you're going to put a dollar amount. If it's a percentage, you're going to put a percentage. So if you decide to charge, 6% to list it, sell it, whatever, you're going to put that there. If you charge 1%, you're going to put it there. And then unrepresented buyers. So this is something that is important for you to discuss with your clients. If the buyer is not represented by a buyer brokerage, then the listing broker assumes additional responsibilities related to the transaction. In this scenario, the listing broker will not represent the buyer, but will facilitate the completion of required documents and ensure honest treatment of all parties. In this situation, the listing broker compensation shall be blank. What are you going to charge your seller to do 2 jobs? You're not representing the buyer, but you're doing extra paperwork. This used to not be in there. And I can't tell you how many deals I did where the buyer was unrepresented and I worked my ass off and I got just my flat compensation because this wasn't in here. And that's just my fault for not negotiating it, but you can negotiate it in here. So if we can't talk about percentages, but let's say you charge 1% to list somebody's house, okay? And if an unrepresented buyer comes, you're going to charge them 2% because you're doing double the work. But you're not representing the buyer. So that's important. Payment of compensation. Again, you can read through this at your leisure. But this is basically saying that you're going to be paid for all these reasons. If they accept a written offer, if they get a list price offer, if with a ready, willing, and able buyer and seller chooses not to accept, you should still be paid. If the seller conveys the real estate in an effort to circumvent this agreement, if he sells it behind your back, you should still be paid. You can put extra verbiage here if you would like. I'm just gonna double check. So yeah, so you can put anything else there, like I don't know what you might put there. I'm thinking if they had sometimes sellers will be like, well, I want to list with you, but my cousin Joe said he was going to buy it. So if he buys it, I don't want to pay you. And if you agree to that, then you may put that there. That would be the only thing I could think of. Buyer broker compensation offering. All right, another important part of our listing agreement. This is where you're deciding or not deciding, or deciding not to, or deciding to negotiate on it, what you will pay a buyer's agent, your seller will pay a buyer's agent if they bring an offer. So if they want to decide on a flat fee to pay the buyer's brokerage, you could put that. If they want to pay the buyer's agent 4%, because that's what they're choosing to do, then you're going to put 4% in there. We can't talk about numbers, so I don't want to confuse you guys, but if you charge 8% to list, if you charge 4% and you think the buyer's agent will probably charge 4%, then you can offer 4% to buyer's agents. You can tell your client to do that. The best checkbox on here for me is the second checkbox. The seller elects to offer compensation to the buyer brokerage at a negotiable amount based on terms of the conditions of the contract. So that gives your seller the ability to say, yeah, I'll pay 4% if it's a full price offer, with no closing costs. They can say that, but then they can also decide, okay, well, we got an offer for $20,000 under purchase price and they're asking for 4%. I don't want to pay them the full percent. That doesn't lock them into any dollar amount. So that's the best for me. That's what I always do.
So some sellers haven't sold the house.
Yeah.
Who do I pay? Who pays what? What's the easiest way to explain to the seller?
Yeah. So it gets a little confusing. So it's not necessarily an easy way, but the objection I get is, why do I have to pay the buyer and the seller? A buyer's agent and the seller's agent. So in our market, this is what's pretty consistent is sellers will pay the buyer's agent and the listing agent. That compensation is negotiable and it's something that you can decide on. You can decide on it now, or you can decide on it based on the offer that you receive. My fee is this. Whatever you choose to offer the buyer's agent is completely up to you and it's negotiable. And that's just how we do it. If but they need to know that like if they don't want to offer, they don't have to. They don't have to offer buyer's agent compensation. They don't have to do it. But they need to know that that's perfectly fine. And I'm happy to do that for you. But I just want to let you know that may lessen the buyer pool because a lot of buyers don't have, an additional X amount to pay their agent in addition to their closing cost and their down payment.
So if you list a house and you say they're not going to pay, where is that showing?
It's not, can't be.
So if someone buys the house, you don't know.
Correct. You can call and ask. You're allowed to call and ask, is your seller offering any BAC, buyer's agent compensation? They can answer it or they cannot. I don't answer it. I say, we'll look at whatever offer comes in. Because your seller here might say he's not going to pay a buyer's agent, and then he might sit on the market for 60 days and get a contract that's asking for buyer's agent comp and change his mind. So it's in the best interest of your seller to look at every offer that comes in, whether it's asking for buyer's agent comp or not, and then let them decide. They can also counter the buyer's agent comp if they're not happy with it. Like if they get an offer and it's at 6% that the buyer's agent wants, and they only want to pay 2%, they can counter back with that. It pisses agents off. It pisses me off. But it's in our contract now. It's negotiated. And this is what we cannot expect a certain percentage from anyone. There is no standard. What you charge is what you charge. And your buyers are going to sign a buyer's agent agreement with you to pay you that amount. And if the seller doesn't want to pay you that full amount, your buyer has to make up the difference or find another house.
So it's becoming less represent buyers.
No, I don't think so. I have gotten paid my fee on every single buyer I've worked with. It hasn't been an issue. I may have negotiated a little bit. I may have had to lesser my fee or, whatever. But that was on me. I can do that. But most contracts that I have written have been perfectly fine with paying my buyer's agent, whatever that amount might be. So any other questions about buyer's agents stuff? The best box is the middle one, I'm telling you. It's the best way to go. And people may disagree. I'm not God when it comes to that opinion. So other people might disagree with me, but that's how I run my business and it's worked out for me. Protection period is important. So if somebody sees the house while you have it listed, and then, or you bring somebody to show the house while you have it listed, and then your listing contracts ends, and that buyer ends up buying the house, you should still be compensated. So you're going to put a protection period for you in this. I do 60 days. So 60 days on here. Now, will you ever get that money? I don't know. You have to, fight for it, but it's important. 60 days. It also lets your sellers know that like you take your job seriously and you're doing your job to the best of your ability. So if something were to happen in 60 days, it might be from acts that you did during your listing time. So just put, whatever amount of days in there that you want. I do 60. Again, you can read through all of these because I'm going to rush just a tad because I talk too much. No, it's okay. I talk a lot. Okay, so line 223, publish listings to the internet. So this is where they're going to check off in here. And it's basically seller authorizes the listing brokerage to list the sale of the real estate with the multiple listing service operated and maintained by multiple listing service of Greater Cincinnati and or other multiple listing service to which listing brokerage is a member in accordance with the rules and regulations of the MLS. Listing brokerage and MLS may disclose information pertaining to said real estate to MLS participants authorized to receive MLS information. Listing brokerage is further authorized to place information about the real estate and any listing services, informational services, and other media of listing brokerage's choosing to advertise and promote the sale of the real estate. Listing brokerage is authorized to disclose in any MLS such information about the real estate in accordance with the following provisions. Publish listings to internet. This is outside of the MLS, so there's like a syndication box that we can check on our listings. And again, one of those forms I brought up earlier is no syndication. They don't want that your people want it on Zillow and Realtor. If they don't, I don't know if they really want to sell their house. Always check yes. Show address on internet, I always check yes, because that would be silly not to. Allow AVM, automated valuation model. I don't do this because what if I have it priced higher than that AVM and then I look dumb, but it's not actually dumb because those AVMs are all AI and they're not always right. It's like your Zillow's estimate. I put no there. Allow internet blogging. Now, I used to put yes on this, and then Tracy, who's a broker at another brokerage now, she once said to me during a class, well, what if somebody goes and writes a terrible blog about your listing? Like, what if they say, oh, this is priced high, da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So I'm torn on that. If it's a listing that I don't know, I just always put no now, but that's just me. One listing I sent to like what's the Facebook site with like it's not Zillow Gone Wild, but like something like that, like a Facebook site that had a lot of people, and I sent my listing into that because it was like a really unique listing. And so in that case, I clicked yes on this because I knew I wanted to have it on those external sites. Is it going to be caught if it's on an external site? Probably not unless it goes viral. So it's just, up to you whether you check that or not. Is it subject to short sale? That's important too. Let's see where we're at. Oh, are you going to put a sign in the yard? You're going to click is authorized. I hope. If you're not authorized, click not. And then these are important too. I would encourage you to read through these, but this is saying that they'll let non-licensed individuals required to facilitate the marketing of the real estate to access the real estate without the presence of a licensed broker and agent. So if you need to send your stager in there, if you need to send your cleaner in there, if you need to send your, assistant that's not licensed, you can do that. Licensed inspectors and licensed appraisers are allowed in. You want to authorize that, yes. Without the presence of a licensed real estate agent. Now, you may have a listing where the seller doesn't want anybody in the house ever unless you're there, and that's okay. You would click no for that. Does not authorize. And then the buyer of the real estate and the home inspector can be present without me there. So if my person's getting an inspection, I can't make it, my buyer can go and sit with the inspector and go through the documentation. If they have surveillance equipment, you need to mark this and make sure that your seller understands if they have a Ring doorbell, if they have cameras in the house. They're not allowed to listen to people, and they're really not allowed to like watch people, and they need to know that. Can you keep them from doing that? I don't know, but they need to sign off on it. There's another form too about surveillance if you want more detail on that. If you look in I think it's on the MLS docs. Are they providing a home warranty? The sellers, do they want to buy a home warranty for the buyers? Now, Emily came the other day, and our home warranty girl, and she talked about the options of buying a home warranty at the start and how it can protect your seller during the listing and then transfer to the buyer. And I love that. So that may be something you want to utilize in your listing. If you want to pay for it, you can do that and you pay for it. And then if something breaks during the listing, your seller's covered. And up to $1,000 in repairs for certain things on the inspections. So I love that. I think it's a great option. If you need more information on that, reach out to Emily Doyle. She had a lot of great information. I mean, you could always build that into your list price too, right? So you can charge, a little bit more of a percentage maybe to cover that cost, but you're bringing value. So that's why you charge what you charge. And I think it was like $500. So it's not a lot. And you can pay it at closing. Any additional terms and conditions here? If there are not any, make sure you put blank, or don't put blank, put none. If you have a transaction fee, you can put that here. So seller pay a $399 transaction fee at closing, whatever that may be. This is important. Line 302. They better be prohibited from entering into an exclusive right to sell agreement with somebody else. They better be. It better be is. And you're going to put signatures here. A lot of things that get left off sometimes is the seller's information. And while I understand that that's silly to put it on this because you already have their phone number in your phone, for documenting purposes, if you get sued in 5 years and it's because of this contract, that gives me everybody's contact information very easily, and I don't have to ask you to go through phone. So it's important to at least put their name and phone number. So that and email really, so that I have all that information and you have it. you know, if you need to go back and refer to anything. So this is just information you're going to fill in your brokerage, which is Keller Williams Seven Hills. The principal broker is Tara, and then you can put me, Margaret Kilo, there. Your name, your contact information, your email, and your signature. Very quickly, because we have 3 minutes. Yeah, this is an awesome form, and Lindsay brought this to my attention. So this is a disclosure and acknowledgement for an unrepresented buyer. What this means, you have a listing. Somebody wants to see it. They won't sign a buyer's agent agreement with you. Here, this is what you use. You sign this before you show it.
What does this do?
This says that you are showing the property and you work for the seller, and the only reason you're showing the property is because you work for the seller, and they're not agreeing to work with you, and they don't have to pay you anything, but you're showing them the property because you're doing that in the best interest of your seller. That's it. It says don't disclose any information that you don't want disclosed to the seller. It's a fail safe for you. I mean, we have been able to show it on behalf of the seller. That's been a thing. That's kind of how we would go around the buyer's agent agreement for a while, because buyers don't always want to sign a buyer's agent agreement with the agent that has a listing, because they might be going to all the listing agents and trying to get themselves a deal. But this gets you out of any issues with that. They are stating that they're unrepresented. You are stating that you work for the seller. That's good. So use that and read through this so you know exactly what it is. But this also says that they have or have not entered into a buyer representation agreement with any other real estate brokerage. It's important to know that too. Because if they have, you might say, well, go call that person if you want to see this house. Nope. I mean, buyers can still buy houses on their own. Yeah. They don't have to be. For a real estate agent to open a door, they have to have something signed, period. But a buyer can go to open houses by themselves. They can go call listing agents on their own if they want. A buyer can still go in unrepresented. It's stupid, but that's their own choice. This is just letting them know, I'm just letting you know I'm not working for you. I work for my seller. You don't want to be represented. That's totally cool. I need you to sign this so that we all understand the agency relationship here. You need to pair this with a consumer guide too, if you send it out. Just send them both out. And people are hesitant to sign these things. I get it. You know, you can take it to the showing with you if you want. Listen, because sometimes if you send stuff digitally, they won't sign it. You have to sign this before I can open a door. It's the law. I'm not representing you. I'm not trying to swindle you. Come on, I'm just talking. But this is, yeah. Sorry, I'll keep it open. I don't.
They're not gonna have anything left for me with.
Oh, they will.
the contract. I gotta go find
I don't know how to turn this live streaming off of YouTube though.
That's okay. Just
Okay.
hold it. I'll do it.
Okay.
Let me go find this. I said, I'll do it when I
Yes.
get back, but let me go find this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Let's just go get Lindsay to figure it out. Because it should be. Yeah, this is above my brain. I paused it. I don't know if that does anything. Okay. If you guys have questions, holler at me. Matthew always. But I can also talk to your stuff. So just let me know.
I got some information, and I didn't do that before we walked in here, so I don't want to forget that.
How?
see. Okay, so we are in contract class, but we're coming out of